Hello, my name is Jerry Overton. Welcome to the class. I look forward to meeting all of you later on this week when we have our first in-class session. But in the meantime, let's talk about the factors of getting and keeping attention. Those are key factors for anyone who is going to be making a presentation or a speech. In the book Instant Replay by Jerry Kramer, Green Bay Packer coach Vince Lombardi is quoted as telling a player who's forgotten a snap count that the average attention span of a college student is 30 minutes, maybe less. The average attention span of a high school student is 20 minutes, maybe less. And the average attention span of an elementary student is 1 minute, maybe less. And he goes on to tell the player, you can't remember anything for 15 seconds? Where does that put you? Well, where does that put us today? Again, those numbers that I was just quoting are from 1967, a long time ago. Today, the Media How-To Guide for Nonprofits, written by David Perry, says the continuous attention span of adults today is 15 seconds. 15 seconds is all, unless you have something built into your speech that not only gets the attention of the viewer or the listener at the beginning, but keeps them all the way through to the end. To quote Professor Stone, each public speaking act should begin with a concerted, dynamic, and meaningful effort to get the attention of the audience, and that effort should be continued through the entire presentation. Now, don't just open with a great story or a joke or some other type of attention getter and then settle in behind the podium into a dry review of statistics or quotations or other similar type pieces of information. Start strong and stay strong. That is the only way you're going to keep your audience and get the message through that you are wanting to get through. Think of it this way. If you're going to take the time to get in front of someone, you're going to take the time to put together this presentation, don't you want them to get the information that you're trying to present? The only way you're going to do that is if you have a lot of attention getters and a lot of practice behind you so that you're comfortable and able to deliver a speech that is not only listenable but is also entertaining. Now, as we've already pointed out, audiences are just less focused these days. We all have less training to pay attention. There's so many distractions. You can be sitting down reading a book in your living room, but chances are you probably have the television on at the same time. And maybe there's something else going on too. So your attention span is never fully and completely locked into any one thing. And also, think of it with the idea that while you are speaking in an auditorium or in a classroom, there's a very good chance that someone in that audience is going to be pulling out a cell phone or an iPod or turning on their laptop, and they're going to be text messaging or emailing or checking Facebook. They're going to be doing a number of different things that will distract them from what you are saying. In addition, that one person who is on his cell phone looking at the iPod, at the podcast that he's downloaded earlier today, or sending text messages, quite often will disturb those around him or her. So that is an added distraction for the other members of the audience and something that you have to deal with. Now, there are a number of ways to attract and keep the attention of your audience, and we're going to discuss these in detail in this lecture and in a second one that I'll post later in the week. The first thing you want to try is activity. Move around. Don't stay behind the podium or the lectern. I don't when I'm lecturing in a classroom. I like to move around. I will go from side to side, from one side of the classroom to the other. I will go from front to back. I will do all of this just to help me keep the audience's attention. Now, what it does is a couple of things. First of all, it forces the members of the audience to turn their heads. It forces them to focus their attention on you. They can't just settle into their seat and lean back and wait for this all to progress. No, they have to be involved, and they have to do some moving around too if they're going to be in the room, because chances are they're curious as to what you're doing when you walk over here or walk over there or move back behind the audience. Also, the closer you are to the members of your audience, the more personable that you seem and the more personal the message is to them. This also removes a barrier between you and the audience. Think of it this way. There's a giant barrier when that lectern is in front of you. It makes the occasion more formal, more stiff. If you get out from behind it, again, it's more personal and the audience is more likely to be receptive to your message. And it helps you to transition between topics. Think of this. You watch television every night, you watch the news. You have an anchor that is on camera and they are reading a story, and then they are going to read another story on camera without any video support. Do they stay looking at the same camera? Chances are no. They will finish the first story, they will look down for a second, and then turn to another camera. This signals a change in the topic, and your movement can help do that as well if you plan this into your speech. Next, encourage your audience to suspend reality and visualize what you are talking about. In radio, which I have been a practitioner of for many, many years, we call this theater of the mind. Try to use words, phrases, stories that help the audience see in their mind what you're talking about. Not only helps to keep their attention, it also helps to make your topic more memorable because it creates this visual image in their memory banks, and then it's much more easy for them to recall what you said because that image will come back when they start to think back to your presentation. Now let's talk about conflict for just a minute. Now most of us really don't like to be involved in a conflict, but at the same time we all enjoy conflict. Think of professional wrestling. How is that program, or how is that sport sold? It is sold by the bombastic statements that the wrestlers make before and after each wrestling match. There are these giant conflicts that go on, and these threats, and all the possibility that there might be violence here that keeps the audience just riveted to the program. 2 weeks ago, in the AFC playoffs, you had the New England Patriots against the New York Jets, one of the highest rated playoff football games in history. Why was it? It was because in the week before there was conflict. You had the coach for the New York Jets making comments about the coach of the New England Patriots. You had players on the Jets trash talking players on the Patriots. This was all over the media, generated lots of excitement. Lots of people tuned in to see that football game. And if for some of you, you may not remember this, but if you've ever read any history of Monday Night Football, you might recall that back in the 1970s, when Monday Night Football was just getting started, it was not the big ratings winner that it is today. But there was a man named Howard Cosell who was one of the commentators. And people tuned in every week just because they hated Howard Cosell and wanted to hear what this man had to say. There were even contests in sports bars around the country where people, the winners of the contest, were allowed to throw a brick through a television set when Howard was on. He annoyed people. He caused problems for people in their minds. But still, they tuned in to watch him. There was conflict. And then one other example about conflict is talk radio. Talk radio is the #1 format in radio today. More people listen to talk radio on a daily basis than listen to country music or classic rock or any other format out there. And the reason is there are people on there, either the hosts or listeners who call in, who are constantly providing opinion. And that opinion creates conflict, and that generates interest, which turns into large audiences. If you want to keep your audience, find a way to create conflict in the mind of your audience members. Humor is another great way to keep your audience tuned to you. If you can get the audience to laugh and have fun, then the rest of the speech seems to go much easier for you. This can be especially helpful if you have someone in the audience who really didn't want to be there to begin with. Think of the husband whose wife drug him to see you speak. He doesn't want to be there. But if you get him relaxed and having a good time, he'll tune in, he'll listen to you, and possibly remember what you have to say. It will also help to keep the members of the audience awake if from time to time you're able to throw in a humorous tidbit. Now, some things to remember as you're using jokes as part of your speech. First of all, make sure the material's funny. Run the joke by others before you spring it on the audience, just to make sure that other people think it's funny. There's nothing worse than someone trying to tell a joke that just isn't funny. It falls flat. It will set you back if the audience doesn't laugh in cue with you. It will make you doubt yourself just a little bit, and it may taint the way that you present the speech later on. Consider your audience. Make sure that the jokes that you tell are not going to be offensive, and they're appropriate for this particular audience. Practice the joke until you have it down. Again, not only is it bad to tell a joke that's not funny, it's bad to tell a joke when you forget the punchline. Always have that joke practiced and down pat so that you can deliver it properly, get the punchline in on time, right where it's supposed to be, and the way that it's supposed to be delivered, and then you will have a successful joke. There are other ways to keep your audience captivated. We'll review those in the next session. Meanwhile, let's review what we've discussed so far. Time. Attention spans are short, and they are getting shorter. You must do everything you can to keep the audience listening to you all the way through your presentation. Move around. Don't let the audience settle in. Try to suspend reality. Use theater of the mind to help the audience personalize your speech and remember it. Use conflict. It keeps people coming back to sports, to television, to talk shows, and it will help your audience stay with you and get involved in what you're saying. And finally, use humor. It will lighten the mood and will help the audience have a good time while listening to your message.